I'm standing with Doron Spielman, who's the Senior Director of the City of David. City of David is directly to the south of the Old City of Jerusalem. It's an archeological wonderland where the Jewish roots of the presence of the Jewish people in the land of Israel is being uncovered all the time. Doron, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Where are we right now? We're in a restricted zone. We went over some funny rocks over here. Where are we? What are we doing here?
Yishai, if there is a center of the world, and within the center of the world there's Jerusalem, you are very close to the founding of actual Jerusalem. We are standing on stones with walls around us on bedrock, which used to be underneath my office. Meaning this, 5 years ago, I worked about 25 feet over our heads in a little wooden office. This was solid ground. Until one day, about 5 years ago, Dr. Eilat Mazar, who works with the Israel Antiquities Authority, she came into my office and she said, Doron, I want to show you a picture. She took out a picture and laid it on my table. It was this picture of this pillar head. She said, Doron, do you know what this is? I said, Eilat, everyone in Israel knows what this is. It's on the 5 shekel coin. I brought a 5 shekel to show you. See? 1 to 1, baby, 1 to 1.
All right, 5 shekel coin. I see that. Okay. So what is it, a 5 shekel coin?
Why did this make the 5 shekel coin? Everywhere in Israel you go, where there's a palace from one of our kings, David, Solomon, and afterwards, we have found these pillar heads, meaning these adorned the top of beautiful pillars. She lays this picture on my desk and says, Doron, in the Jordanian phase, when the Jordanians occupied Jerusalem, this was found in the city of David. I said, a lot everybody knows this. What's the story? She said, listen, I drew a line from where this was found, showing how it must have rolled down the hill, and the place it originated from is underneath your office. Now, Yishai, when she said that to me, I was 25 feet over our heads, and I remember tapping the floor with my foot, saying, there's no way King David's palace is beneath my feet. She said that King David's palace was here. And that launched an excavation which uncovered perhaps the most important archaeology ever connecting our people to Israel.
King David's palace, those are big words. Those are 3 big words. And when you say King David's palace and the fact that you're finding it here, that just says that Jewish history is real, that it happened here, and that there was such a person, there is such a hero, there's such a leader. And that's something that we're going to explore today. You're going to show us around a little bit about the city of David. You're going to show us the beauties of this site, and you're going to also show us how this has become such a mainstream concept in the story of modern-day Israel.
Well, I'll tell you, when Eilat came here and we dug down, she found all around me these walls, massive dressed stones which were cut with tools. Underneath these stone walls, she pulls out pieces of pottery which date to the Jebusites. And if you look at who King David captures Jerusalem from, he captures it from the Jebusites. If you pull out pottery from within these walls, she says that the pottery relates to King David. This is today perhaps the largest archaeological debate in Israel. Is the pottery within these walls connected to David or somebody after? I remember the entire academic world was fighting, it is David, it's not David. One day, I said to Eilat, listen, with all this screaming, is there anything that nobody's screaming about? Is there anything we can agree on? She said, listen, I'll call you if there is. On a Thursday afternoon, maybe 4 years ago, she calls me, said, Doron, our workers were sifting, and they pulled out of the ground a bula, which is an ancient clay stamp. We used to use clay, not wax at the time. We would stamp it with our rings, and it would seal a document. I said, Eilat, is there a name on the stamp? She said, I don't know, I have to melt it down. She calls me 5 minutes before Shabbat. You know what it's like 5 minutes before Shabbat? Everybody's running around like crazy. I said, Eilat, what's the name? She said, Doron, go get Sefer Yirmiyahu. So I opened up Sefer Yirmiyahu. She said, turn to chapter 37 and chapter 38. Do you know what the story's about? And the story, if Jerusalem begins with David, it goes father, son, until it ends with Tzidkiyahu. In the moments before Jerusalem falls to the Babylonians in 586, Tzidkiyahu sends a messenger to Jeremiah the prophet to ask for a bracha. Jeremiah sends him back a message saying, this is it, the city is over. Hashem has left you, give up now. The messenger then turns to the king and says, listen, all your soldiers heard the prophet Jeremiah, and they're all getting out of Dodge. They're booking out of town. You have to kill this prophet now, or you're going to have no soldiers left. So the king sends the messenger to kill the prophet. He throws him into a pit. Jeremiah is eventually saved. That messenger's name in the book of Jeremiah is Yehuchal, the son of Shlomiah. The name that Eilat found was Yehuchal, the son of Shlomiah. She found the actual seal of the minister in the court that tries to kill the prophet Jeremiah, written clearly in the Torah, in the Bible.
Wow. Wow. And so Jeremiah saw the destruction of Jerusalem, but he also was given the prophecy that the houses and the fields and the people will return, and that the Jewish people will return to the land of Israel. And I guess that's part of the story, finding the ancient connection to Israel, but also knowing that we are back and that it's all happening right now. So, Doron, you found the Bula of Yehuchal ben Shlomiah ben Shvi. It is pretty much incontrovertible. That is the name that you found. That is found in the book of Jeremiah. That is the Bula that you found here in the city of David. Can anybody argue about that? Is that one of those moments where it's an aha moment and nobody could say, well, the Jewish people were not here, or can they?
Well, I'll tell you, Yishai, 95% of the world went crazy over this discovery. Keeping in mind, 95% of the world respects the Bible. It was on the cover of the New York Times, it was in the Jewish press, it was in all the major newspapers throughout the world. However, as soon as it went out, I started getting emails into my inbox from all these Arab websites saying this is some form of Zionist propaganda geared to recreate Jewish history, saying there's no proof that this Yuchal is the same Yuchal in the Bible. This is where I learned that God has a sense of humor. Keeping in mind, Yishai, that for every seal, every bully you find, thousands never make it to the surface. They're broken, they're ruined, they're lost. At that point in time, 3 months later, 30 feet from where we were standing, where we found the original one, a second seal was found, which in itself is incredible. We melted down the name, and on that seal, it says Gedaliyahu, the son of Pashhur. If you open the book of Jeremiah and you look at Yehuchal, the son of Shlomiah, when he went to kill the prophet Jeremiah, he took 3 people with him. One of them was Gedaliyahu, the son of Pashhur. For the first time in archaeological history, you have 2 names which appear in the same sentence of the Bible, found in the same excavation at a distance of 30 feet from each other. That, my friend, is totally incontrovertible proof.
And that's also a miracle. And that's also something that's just sent chills down my spine. I mean, how come their seals were here? Why did they just drop their seals? How did that happen exactly, that it was found so close together? What was the circumstance by which you guess, these seals were found so close to one another?
Well, you lead to the main point here, and that's an excellent question. Clearly, if we find 2 seals, which already shows that they're royal people of importance, with 2 names that made it into the big book, and both of these 2 people knew Jeremiah, clearly you are standing in a place that was used during the biblical period, that ministers and kings and government officials and prophets were walking through, and that is another great proof that this could be the palace of King David, and in any case, this was a major building from the First Temple period.
Maybe a high court building or some kind of government building?
Absolutely. These were documents that had been signed. Probably the documents were burnt away by the Babylonians, and the same fire that burnt away those documents cooked and burned these seals like in a kiln and preserved them for 2,600 years.
Yet another miracle. Amazing stuff. Doron Spielman, we're going to keep going. You're going to show us how the ancient world is coming to life again in the modern state of Israel. I'm here with Doron Spielman, Senior Director of the City of David. Doron, you got me so excited about these things, and especially about the prophet Jeremiah. I've always had a little archaeological dream of my own. This week's Torah portion, we happen to be filming after the Torah portion of Behar. We read about, from the book of Jeremiah, about the story about when the city was being destroyed. At that very moment, God calls out Jeremiah and says, I want you to buy a plot of land in Anatot. And it's a kind of sign that though the city is being destroyed, it shall live on. The Jewish people shall return. It will be destroyed now, but there will be a second coming, if you will, okay? We will return. And Jeremiah, is very kind of moved. He's living it. He's seeing the destruction of Jerusalem. He signs a document. He puts it in an earthenware vessel, and he says this is going to be a sign that indeed we shall return again, and that houses will be built, fields will be bought, children are going to play. It's going to be that Jeremiah-esque vision of that great return that will come one day. Is there a chance to find that very document? Because if we find that document, won't that be the greatest sign that we are actually in this return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel? And I understood that document was signed outside of the city of Jerusalem in Anatot, but maybe I was wrong about that.
I'll tell you, Yishai, if we're going to find that document, it's going to be within the Dalet Amot, within the few meters that we're digging right now. What the Bible tells us in the Haftorah for Parshat Bahar is that Jeremiah was locked in the dungeon in Chetzer HaMatara, which is the area somewhere between the Beit HaMikdash and the palace of King David, right in this area. As a matter of fact, right next to me is a hole which goes into an underground cistern. This could be the cistern that Jeremiah was thrown into. Who knows? It could be. It could be this one. It could be a few meters away. When Jeremiah stamps that document, it was then placed in an earthenware vessel. That vessel would have been in Jerusalem, kept for safekeeping in Jerusalem. All the documents were stored in the Central Archive. This room that we're in now could be the Central Archive. That could be why we find so many seals. This could be right here. However, the Babylonians come in, they destroy this entire area with fire, and we find remnants of that fire in this palace. When they did so, that scroll could have been burnt away. If it was, that seal could have been burned like in a kiln and could be waiting for us to pluck out of the wall, underneath a stone. It could be here. It could be under any stone around us. We've already found 2 people connected to the prophet Jeremiah. It's a short jump to find that of the prophet himself.
That would be something else. You know what? I'm not an archaeologist, but I'm willing to bet that we're still going to even find that document, because that document is a promise. That document is a promise that we will return, and the city of David is making that happen today. So let's keep going, Doron, and let's see what else you're going to show us in this wonderland.
ירושלים מרים סביב לה, סביב לה, והשם סביב לעמו, מעתה ועד עולם. ירושלים מרים סביב לה, סביב לה, והשם.
Doron, we're right outside the old city walls. You could just see the old city walls of Jerusalem. We're right to the south of them, and that just shows you how, with the proximity of the city of David to the old city of Jerusalem, that's the Temple Mount, that's the center of Jewish worship right up there, and we're going to learn a little bit about the connection between these two places. But what's funny is that right behind me, I remember this used to be a nice parking lot. It's no longer a parking lot. You guys seem to undermine all of your structures at some point.
You're absolutely correct. Listen, every great archaeological site or great tourism center needs parking, and we thought we had it. We had 250 cars parking here. Until about 8 years ago, 2 archaeologists from Hebrew University came, and they said, listen, we want you to clear off all your cars for a week, and we are going to take an MRI underneath your parking lot. It was new technology, wasn't used so well. We said, yalla, let's try it. We went through, we cleared all the cars out of the way, and they took a photograph underneath the ground, which they recreated using a computer algorithm, and they brought us a picture. The picture showed walls, bridges, and most importantly, water cisterns full of water, trapped in 8 different layers beneath the ground, showing that underneath our parking lot, there is a world. The history book of Jerusalem was underneath this parking lot. You want to go take a look?
Let's go take a look.
Let's see it.
Holy moly.
Listen, man, last time you were here, you parked right here. Underneath your house, look what we found. This, you're looking at an entire Roman villa, the largest Roman villa. Of course, the Romans exiled our people and sent us to the 4 corners of the earth. Afterwards, they built a villa here. And when we peel off this villa, which we've done in many sections, you find directly underneath it a massive Jewish home. Most likely that home belonged to Queen Helena, a non-Jewish queen who converts to Judaism, and she lives here until her death in the year 40 CE. And beneath her home, we have another 35 feet to go, which we've already begun to unearth the First Temple period. The mysteries, my friend, come back here in a few months. This is going to yield amazing discoveries for the connection to Jerusalem.
I see there a psifas, what do we call that in English?
A mosaic.
Mosaic. What is that mosaic of?
It's interesting. You know, on Passover, we lean to the side because the Romans leaned to the side. That most likely was an area where they were reclining around that central mosaic, eating their food, dipping with one hand. And we, of course, in our Passover Seder are mimicking them with the same sense of freedom. That was the dining room, followed by a number of guest rooms for the same structure. just over here to the west. And we have working in here on any day between 70 and 100 people from all over the world. One of the greatest stories is a non-Jewish woman, a Gentile woman from England. She worked for BMW in England, and she took a month-long break to come here and volunteer. Somehow her email came across my desk, and I forwarded it on. Next thing I know, a month later, 2 days before she finished her job, she lifts up a stone in this excavation, and she finds 264 gold bullion mint coins, the most valuable treasure ever unearthed in Israel from a monetary perspective. By the time I got to the site, she was already being interviewed by the English press.
Where are those gold coins now?
They're now in the basement of the Israel Museum, and one day we hope that they're going to come back to the site, along with many of the other discoveries.
Wow. Okay, let's keep looking at what's going on here.
Na 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 na, ya na 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 ya da 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 na 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 na.
Doron, we've learned about the First Temple period, and it was basically finished off with Jeremiah. 586 BC, Babylonians come in, destroy it. 70 years later, some people disagree with that, but the Jews come back and start rebuilding the temple. Ezra, Nehemiah, Zerubbabel, a whole period begins. And that period ends with the colossal rebuilding or remaking of the temple in grand Roman-style fashion under King Herod. It was one of the most brilliant structures of the ancient world, and people came from all over the world to see it. But what about the typical Jew who came in from, I don't know, like Modi'in? For example, I gave an example. Modi'in is where the Maccabees are from. They're coming up to the temple, and they want to get up to the Temple Mount. But you can't just go up to the Temple Mount. You got to prepare. You got to be ritually pure. You got to be ready. Give me a little bit of a feeling of what it was like to go up to the Temple Mount in ancient days.
Well, you know, the best comparison I can give, Yishai, is actually of the Hajj. Today, you ask anyone around the world, what is the greatest pilgrimage in the world? Everyone says the Hajj. But we know Hajj comes from the Hebrew word Chag. Chag Pesach, the holiday of Passover. Chag Shavuot and Chag Sukkot. The Jewish idea of a holiday wasn't just sitting and eating gefilte fish. It meant meeting with your family at the footsteps of Jerusalem, purifying yourself and washing away the dirt of the day, and ascending up to communicate with God. And that experience happened at the bottom of the city of David. Now, one of the greatest problems with what I'm saying is that even Josephus himself, the historian, says that he saw hundreds and thousands of Jewish people on the Temple Mount. Hundreds and thousands. Now, archaeologists asked for years. It's impossible for one reason. There were enough Jews, but there weren't enough mikvahs. Could you imagine hundreds of thousands of people going in and out of the jacuzzi at the local Jewish center? It's an impossible dream. It just can't happen. Look how much time it takes. Until 2004. I remember I got a call at my office that there was a sewage leak in the city of David. The city was in the middle of repairing the sewage leak when they unearthed a massive set of stairs. We began immediately sent crews. They dug the stairs. You're talking about a pool with stairs leading into it on all four sides, much larger than an Olympic-sized pool, down at the bottom of the city of David. So people would immerse into a pool, become pure, but then they had another problem. From that pool up to the temple, you had to walk 2,300 feet. How could you walk? If you're Tahor and I'm Tameh, you're pure and I'm impure and I bump into you, you've got to go back in. So remember the archaeologists at the time, Ronnie Reich and Eli Shukran, they said, if this is in fact a mikvah, we will find a road which leads from this pool to the temple. That, my friend, was prophecy, and that road was found. And that's what we're about to see.
So the road is going to lead from down here all the way up there.
That's right. All right. That road leads all the way up. We have pictures of it as the stones, the stairs carry up. We're in the middle of excavating the road. We've excavated about 350 feet of it. What we found, which is quite amazing, is beneath the road, there is a water tunnel, large enough for a person to stand in, and that area you can clean out very quickly. That is the section today that is going to take us all the way up from now to the floor stones of the Temple Mount, while over our heads we'll touch the stones of the road.
So we're going to go underneath the road.
Underneath the road of where our fathers and mothers 2,000 years ago walked up to worship years before Jesus, 600 years before Muhammad.
Let's go. Doron, for the claustrophobics, this is starting to get a little tight here. We're standing on a north-south axis, and the walls are getting kind of squishy. Why are they squishy? What's to the south? What's to the north?
First of all, Yishai, over your head is the Herodian Road. I'm going to show you the floor stones of the road in a few minutes. We are in the water channel, which is just about the width of a person, stood about 2 meters high, where the water would run down from the upper city all the way underneath the city of David to irrigate the fields at the bottom. Herod did not leave out a single detail. Now, there's no question when Herod built this, he also had something else in mind, which was that if the city should ever go to war again, this would be the underground matrix by which our fighters would go underneath the ground and battle their enemies, which in fact happened. Just to the north of us, we're going to walk to this day north towards the direction of the Beit HaMikdash till we get to the floor stones of the Kotel, and to the south, you would hit the Shiloach pool. We're standing in the middle of that crossroads.
Awesome. Okay, underneath the ground, in a channel. All right, let's do it. I understand that we're here in this water channel.
That's right.
There it is. Take a look. There it is. There's the water channel. And the road is right above us. That's where all the people are going up to the Temple Mount.
Their feet were right here. This is the road. Our forefathers and foremothers and their children were walking on their pilgrimage to the Beit HaMikdash right here 2,000 years ago.
ירושלים הרים סביב לה, סביב לה, השם סביב לעמו, מעתה ועד עולם. ירושלים הרים סביב לה, סביב לה, השם סביב.
Okay, we're here in the tunnels, and it's still getting a little bit tighter. Doron, how are you feeling here?
Very close to you, Yishai.
What is this thing? What is this?
This metal pipe was used is used today to transport our bags from the people excavating in the north. The bags slide down this pipe about 350 feet until they hit the drop-off point where they're collected and sifted. This is a transportation shaft, which one of our workers came up with and saved us about 1 million shekels a year just by putting this in.
Wow. Okay, this was a place of breakthrough for you, is that right?
That's correct.
What was the breakthrough?
In this area, last January, meaning 15 months ago January 2011, our teams have been digging for months, swinging their axe day after day for years. We thought we had another 2 years of work before we would make it to the Western Wall. One night in January, one of the workers swung his axe, and right here, it opened on this top layer. From here, about to the bar, it was open. We crawled on our stomachs all the way through here, all the way north in one day. There were 5 of us that came through here and a cameraman. The most uncomfortable situation was when the cameraman was behind us and we had to put him in front of us. We had to each lay down on our backs and to climb over us. And this was the area where in one day we climbed north to the floor stones of the Kotel that I'm going to show you.
Wow. So this tunnel was kind of left, there was an air pocket or a space that did not get filled up over time.
That's it.
And you were able to get through it. Okay, it's still not so huge around here.
Listen,
All right.
it takes a real man or a real woman to make it up to the temple.
Okay, let's keep going.
עד עולם, ועתה ועד עולם. Na 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 na, na 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 na. Na 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 na, na 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 ya da da da. Na 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 na.
I realized that while this was a planned place for Herod to make sure that the water exits the city and irrigates the fields below, and that this was also used in case there would be warfare above and fighters can sneak around underneath. But it's also a place where a horrible killing spree of Jews, a real Holocaust took place during the destruction of the Second Temple. Jews knew about this this passageway, went down here. The Romans knew about it also, and they chased the Jews down here, and they made a spree of killing them, really. And therefore, like, as I'm walking through these tunnels, yes, I'm walking up to the temple, but I'm also remembering the Jewish history that is just the Holocaust of the ancient world. And it happened right here. And you could hear, if you pay attention, the screaming of the Jews who only wanted liberation, only wanted freedom, only wanted to worship in the way that was prescribed to them, just fleeing for their very lives and being taken out here. What can you tell me about that?
I'll tell you, it was a shock when we crawled through here and we found completely whole pottery vessels with food still caked on the inside of them. Dozens of pottery vessels, forks, knives, dice. It looked like somebody had a picnic in this tunnel. And we left bewildered. We said, why would we find in a water tunnel this much intact stuff? Until you open the book of Josephus, and in Jewish wars, Josephus is chronicling the destruction. This tunnel, we have to understand, was the exit point from the old city, the city of Jerusalem, to Masada. After the first people fled to Masada successfully, the last 2,000 Jews in Jerusalem go underneath these stones with men, women, and children. They try to flee towards Masada. And Josephus writes, the Romans heard they were here, they blocked them in, they tore open the ground, and they killed them, and they sold the rest into slavery. The last breath of Jewish life in Jerusalem was here.
And about 1 million Jews were killed, and about 100,000 altogether were sold into slavery. So that's a lot of folks in the ancient world, and that happened right here.
Yeah.
Okay, we've been underneath this road now for a long time, and it was a kind of flat top right overhead. Suddenly we came to a clearing, should we call it, and there's a rounded, arched way right above us, and suddenly a very sharp right turn away from a kind of straight road that we were before. Suddenly it's kind of like an S-turn going on here. What's the significance? What's going on?
So you've been walking now for 2,300 feet, Yishai, and this is the first turn in the entire path. When we crawled, and we all of a sudden saw the arched roof over our heads, we understood that we had entered some type of area of prominence. We weren't exactly sure why. And then the tunnel curves, and as we followed it, one of the guys with us said, I bet if it didn't turn, it would continue going straight underneath the area of the western wall of the Temple Mount. That's why Herod built it as it turns around to prevent that from happening. And in fact, we are at the southwestern corner of the Temple Mount right now. We're walking around the southwestern corner, heading north towards the western wall.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Once you're in the area of the Temple Mount, everything changes. The walls are wider. The roof is arched and bigger. This was an area that was used on a much greater level because this is where all the holy worshiping was taking place.
But this was still the water channel?
Still the water channel.
Okay.
But people would have been down here more. For whatever reason, we found many caves here, areas for people to work. Apparently this area was much more accessible than the rest.
Okay.
Take a look.
You crawled all these feet, 2,300 feet, until you got to this room. This room has some kind of chimney, some kind of skylight, and here you were able to turn around. Where are we at?
It's hard for me to describe to you what it's like slithering on your stomach for 2.5 hours with 4 other people, having no idea where you're going to go or what you're going to find until we reached this room. We fell into this room, and one of the guys with us said, wow, there's light coming in from up above. It was Eli Shukran from the Israel Antiquities Authority. We were accompanying him. We said, where are we? He said, we must be somewhere in the old city. Until then he said, everybody be quiet. It was about 8:39 in the morning, and we heard a guide speaking in English to a group 25, 30 feet over our heads, saying to the group, here we are, standing underneath Robinson's Arch, the original entranceway into the temple. And we realized that we are deep underneath the ground, underneath Robinson's Arch. Where are we now? We are in a room which is a cistern which predates this tunnel. This cistern is from the first temple period. During the time of Shlomo's temple, people were using this shaft, this chimney as you called it, to drop buckets and draw water. When Herod made his tunnel in his road, he simply broke one wall in here, the other wall behind us, and simply broke right through to make his water channel. But here we are underneath right now the largest freestanding bridge in the world, which led the Jewish people and people from all over the world into the temple.
So the western wall is right here?
Yeah, just beyond us.
Wow.
You're going to go underneath it right now.
I'm seeing something a little bit irregular here. There's a gigantic stone that has somehow seems like it fallen into the tunnel, and yet kind of built around it is the mason work around the this gigantic stone. God, that must weigh what, 30, 40 tons? What does it weigh?
5 tons, but but it's still a lot. It's about five cars, just one of these stones. In fact, we understand that this stone fell during the construction of the temple. This must have fallen. The work crews dropped a stone. It got wedged here in the tunnel, and they simply built over it and around it. Now, when we came through here, Yishai, you have to understand, Eli Shukran, the archaeologist, said, wait a second, I've seen that stone before. I said, where? He said, Charles Warren, who was sent here by Queen Victoria in the 1860s to look for treasure. There's a drawing that they made of him at the time underneath this stone. We crawled out. We went online. We found the actual picture, the drawing of Charles Warren, the great archaeologist of ancient Israel, standing underneath this stone. This picture is 1867. There's Charles Warren underneath the stone. And here we are, continuing the journey looking for treasure.
So he was lost? This.
Sure, we had the picture, but we didn't know where Charles Warren ever was. He climbed out, left. The Muslims covered up all the holes, and nobody ever came down here again.
Wow. So knowledge is oftentimes lost and refound again, and that's the story of archaeology. Hopefully this time we won't lose it again, right?
That's the hope. It's here to stay.
Doron, when people show up at the Western Wall, they're always amazed at the spiritual site, and people from all over the world are showing up. They're also very surprised when I tell them that what they're seeing is actually just a small part of the Western Wall. The Western Wall is much larger. What I'm always excited to tell them is that right beneath what they're looking at, the Kotel, if they're facing the Western Wall, they look to the right, they'll see the southern excavations, and they'll also see the continuation of the Western Wall, which was actually a shopping plaza, which proves that it was Jewish. So therefore, people get very excited. They see it was real life, storefronts and all the stuff. And I explained to them that the Western Wall actually goes far through the Old City, all the way through the Arab quarter, the Muslim quarter. And we talk about also the Western Wall tunnel excavations, and it goes way down. Actually, if you go to the Western Wall today, you go into the tunnel, you can look down, you see it's way, way deeper down. But now you're telling me that it's yet even deeper down. And here we are at the Western Wall, at the foundations of the Western Wall right here. This is the foundation. This is where Herod started building the temple and its environs. So how come the people don't know about this? What does this mean? And what are these beautiful, beautiful stones, rougher than we're used to seeing at the Kotel? Give me a little bit of an explanation, please.
As you mentioned, Yishai, this was the largest structure on Earth, at least in the eastern half of the Earth, if not in the entire planet, at the time that was being used by people. Herod's temple was 12 square football fields in size. He plants the floor stones on the bedrock of Mount Moriah. Here we are, dozens of feet beneath where worshipers are praying, in a quiet underground plaza, which has been covered for 2,000 years. Herod first laid these stones, and then rethinking his plan, he covers these stones up in order to make a road higher than where we're standing today. The fascinating thing, Yishai, is when he goes to cover these stones to create a higher road, he sweeps the dirt from the Temple Mount into this area. Wow. Everything you find here is swept from the Temple Mount, and that is why the discoveries here have been absolutely unbelievable.
Even from First Temple things.
Yes, you found First Temple things, including seals from the First Temple with names on them, which we recently announced, the seal of Matanya, who appears in the Book of Chronicles. And that's just the beginning. Mostly what you find, though, are things at the time that the temple was being used in its glory, like the golden bell that we find, the first golden bell ever found in Israel, solid gold with a clasp on the end of it. And when we took it out and I shook it, it still has the pommel and the bell inside of it.
Now, this was part of the high priestly garment. There would be a bell and a pomegranate on the edge of the hem of his tunic, and he would wear this, and it would make a little bit of rustling noise as he walked into the Holy of Holies. He had to wear that in order to kind of announce himself. And we found those little gold bells.
For the first time ever in the whole country, you find a golden bell, and you find it just next to the Temple Mount. The likelihood that this came from his garment, like you said, is incredibly high, according to all archaeological opinions. But that was just one thing we found. The next thing we found, Yishai, was this, perhaps the most moving piece. An inscription of the menorah. It only has 5 branches. Possibly the artist ran out of room, but somebody began in a very rough, almost like a childish way, to carve the shape of the menorah at the time when the Jewish menorah stood at the temple in the highlight of the service. They must have carved it, put their little carving off to the side. Herod sweeps it into this tunnel. It's one of only 3 depictions ever found of the menorah. We even have the stand that was found here. But of course, Yishai, amidst the glory, we also have, as you mentioned before, the destruction. This sword, found in its scabbard, is a sword from the Roman 10th Legion. We have to imagine, today you say the word Nazi and Jews get shivers up their spine. For 2,000 years, you said the word Roman 10th Legion and you got shivers up your spine. These were the people that killed 1 million of our people, that exiled us to the 4 corners of the earth. We find one of their swords inside its scabbard right here.
Wow. So 10th Legion, these were serious fighting folks, and they came to destroy Jerusalem. But before Jerusalem was destroyed, it was first rebuilt in this glorious fashion. And what Herod did was he took the small, let's call it Solomon's Temple area, and he widened it out by making these walls, that, including the Western Wall, that gave a lot more room. He filled in the room that was left with dirt, created it, and made a much bigger plaza. You're talking about 12 football fields, and this is the very base of it. This is the very base of it. So if you want to kind of get to the root of the temple and the root of the Kotel, the Western Wall, here it is, this stone right here. How much does this weigh, you think? Come on.
Dozens and dozens of tons. By the way, Yishai, there's still room here for a few notes. You can be amongst the first.
I think I will pray here a little bit. Thanks, Doron. Thanks for the opportunity. Well, I'm looking forward to, if you keep doing your work, maybe we'll get even closer to praying where we once prayed in the ancient times, and one day we'll again.
Can you hear that song?
Amen. You've got something in your hands for me, something for our viewing pleasure here. You have a coin that has somebody who looks a lot like my dad. Who is this person on the coin? What does it say?
I don't think you would want this person to be your dad. This says in it, Vespasian. Vespasian is, of course, the Roman emperor that destroys the temple. This was called the Judaic Capta coin because on the obverse side, it has a picture of a palm tree with a Jewish maiden crying as she submits to a Roman soldier whose shield and armor are sitting on the other side of the tree. This was, Yishai, if the Jewish people had a cry to be free people. We didn't want to conquer anybody. We just wanted to live free, to daven to Hashem, to pray to God. This is what the Romans stood against, that everybody should be subjugated. The average victory coin minted by Rome would be minted maybe 2 or 3 times. This coin, Yishai, was minted 42 times. The Roman victory over the Jews was a victory over monotheism, over the freedom of an individual to communicate with God. The only arch to remain, the victory arch in Rome today, is the Arch of Titus, the victory over our people.
Well, there's another side to the victory of the Romans over the Jews, and the fact that they printed these coins. It shows what an intense enemy the Jews were. We were no pushover nation. We were actually the nation that fought them, annoyed them to no end. We actually rebelled against the Romans twice. And that just goes to show you the prowess, the fierceness of the Jewish fighters. And in fact, Bar Kokhba took this coin and minted over it and said, L'chirut Zion, for the freedom of Jerusalem, for the freedom of Zion. So we were a tough enemy. And a lot of times when people accuse Israel of being an occupier, I tell them not only are we not an occupier, but we're occupation busters. We bust people who try to take over our land and stop us from worshiping the way we want to worship. We fought the Romans because we had the audacity. We lost, but here we are now, and we've won because we're back, and they're not.
Yishai, here we are, we're walking 25 feet up all the way to ground level to the street that our mothers and fathers thousands of years ago used to go into the temple.
Daylight. Wow. Woo! Oh my gosh. Oh my God. Oh my gosh, this was the most exciting staircase I've ever climbed in my life. We're at the continuation of the Western Wall. It is breathtaking. I can't believe it. I just came out from underground. I just walked the way of my forefathers. Doron Spielman, you're the senior director of the City of David. Right behind us, we climbed out of a tunnel that connected the City of David to the Western Wall. And behind us here is a mound of stones, beautiful, huge, many-ton stones. They were thrown down by the Romans as they were destroying the Second Temple. But they did not stop at the physical destruction of the Second Temple. The next step was Hadrian's brilliant effort to undermine Jewish history by changing the name of Jerusalem to Aeola Capitolina and the name of Israel to Syria Palestina. He basically renamed Israel Palestine. And one of the main fights that we have today is not only the physical fight of the right for the Jewish people to live in the land of Israel. We're constantly being terrorized and warred against. There's also a media or information war where the very history of the Jewish people is being challenged over and over again. Ahmadinejad, his main claim is, we're not from here. You're not from the Middle East. You're a European problem. You weren't from here. You're not from this whole region. He undercuts Abraham's Middle Eastern nature, the fact that he was first from Iraq and then to Turkey and then to the Holy Land, then to Egypt, then back to the Holy Land. He undercuts Persian history, which shows that Judaism was there 1,500 years before Islam. But he constantly makes an effort to point out that we have no history in Jerusalem. The great historian Arafat also uncovered a lot of these truths that we actually never ever lived here. And yet all your work and the City of David's work and all the archaeologists who are doing great work, the Antiquities Authority uncovering our history, are proving otherwise. What do you say to all those that claim that we have no history and therefore no rights in this land?
You know, Yishai, I would separate into three. There are people who know the truth of their history. There are people who will deny all truth at all expense, radical jihadists, Islamic radicals, which you can show them proof in front of their eyes, and because of this new effort to rewrite history, they'll deny it. Neither of those two camps are the ones we need to really be concerned with. What we need to be concerned with, Yishai, is the average man and woman throughout the world who wants truth, who wants to know what happened here. And to those people, the City of David firmly explains that our people suffered this destruction 2,000 years ago. We lived here with two incredible dynasties beforehand, and the dream of that dynasty and the feeling of that dynasty never ever left our souls until we came back to this land. And everything you pull out of the ground in the City of David, every stone you overturn is another element of that, which is why here we are next to the Temple Mount. Ikrim Sabri, the Mufti of the Temple Mount, once said in a Friday sermon, or many times said, any stone you turn over in Jerusalem, not one of them shows Jewish history. He has to say this, Yishai, because every little child that kicks a bit of sand here uncovers 3,000 years of our people's history here. That's the power of where we are. Nobody can erase us. These stones may have fallen, but we're back here today. They can say that this place is called Palestine, but we know in everything we uncover is Israel. It was, it is, and it always will be.
The Hadrianic War continues, and we are determined to win it. We are determined to know our own history, to know our truth, and therefore to know our rights. And I guess in the end, we're fighting the same battle, which is Lecherut Zion, for the liberation of Zion. Doron Spielman, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Yishai. It's an honor.
Shalom, Shalem, Yeh, Yevus, Gilad, Lebanon, Zion, Talpiot.